This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. Downtown Orlando is undergoing a major facelift. You're already seeing that transformation with the new Creative Village where the old Amway Arena once stood. The 68 acres includes UCF and Valencia College's joint downtown campus, the corporate headquarters for electronic arts, and much needed housing and retail shops. This morning, the developer behind that project, Craig Ustler, is here to talk about what's in store for the next phase of Creative Village and his vision for all of downtown Orlando.
We went from nothing, from an arena and a surface parking lot, to a collection of buildings with the right stakeholders and the right partners. And so those now exist, and there's some activity there with the Luminary Green Park and with the Monroe Restaurant and the students and everybody that lives there. So that's taken us from sort of no activity to some level of activity, but we still need to go to the next level of placemaking and of really livability. We need more office space. The only office space there is EA. So we need to build another office building where other creative class companies can come in. We need to round out the food and beverage offerings. We need to continue to deliver the housing piece. We all understand there's a housing shortage. So in some ways it's just continuing what we're doing, but really focusing on the office piece. As you know, the office piece is tricky. What does post-COVID office space look like? But we do know that companies like EA need a hub and a studio to conduct the work that they do, and it's probably in a hybrid, environment, but still there's value in being together, and and sort of the result that you get from that, the production that you get from that. So we need to layer in some of those elements. We probably ultimately need a new hotel piece. We probably need to focus on how the connection to downtown sort of as a bigger thing works.
Right.
I mean, there's some pockets of downtown that are doing really well, and there's some other pockets that aren't. We need to continue on a broader scope, really working with the mayor and working with the Downtown Development Board. There's also some other interesting things happening on the west side. I mean, Creative Village isn't the only thing.
Yeah.
The Orlando Magic's Sports Entertainment District project is a big project. The city's working on some other things on the west side. So I would tell you, we're just a piece of the puzzle. Hopefully we're a significant piece of it.
Right.
But that's so I think about us, what we need to do within our boundaries, but then I also think downtown as a whole has got some work to do.
Yeah, it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's missing the quite a few surrounding pieces, right? And so sort of trying to tackle more of what people would consider downtown Orlando, that is something that you're now shifting your focus to. So let's go over what you believe needs to happen as far as downtown Orlando is concerned in this post-COVID world.
So think about it like the term that we always used, Central Business District, right? Yeah. So historically, at downtown, we had 70 or 80,000 people working downtown, and this is not unique to downtown Orlando, but all over the country. It was a center of commerce and business, and then you got some results, some kind of ancillary results from that. And then the community venue plan did a good job of putting some of the assets, the new arena, Camping World, the soccer stadium came along, the Performing Arts Center. So you've got some civic, what I call civic assets there, and you've certainly had a boom in residential population, although we're probably only still in the beginning stages of that. There's really demand and room for tens upon thousands more residential units downtown. So think about it, use the word neighborhood instead of central business district, and think about it more holistically and having more things to do day and night. Think about the quality of the place that is downtown. Especially the younger generation is really seeking quality outdoor public spaces. So we have Lake Eola, and there's plans to improve that, but we need more spaces like that. Downtown should really be a collection of multiple outdoor spaces that the community enjoys. And there really should be a greater sense of connectivity. We're taking a hard look at transportation downtown and the two-way streets and how all that works. So the walkability and connectivity is not where we want it to be. Yeah. And then, I shouldn't say any answer to a question that you asked me without saying housing, and I was just saying housing to an extent, but it's not just housing kind of in and of itself, it's a diversity of housing, right? So you hear the conversations that are very real about affordable housing, and so we need to be looking at housing across the spectrum. I don't want to act like I think the answer is just we need to build more super expensive apartments.
Sure.
That's part of the equation. Market rate apartments are part of it, but there's got to be a full spectrum of housing delivered. And so this is a lot of people need to help with this, right? This isn't something that just Creative Village can do. But I will say, you're asking about being satisfied. I will say what Creative Village does I think, is it's kind of a tone setter.
Yeah.
Or maybe you use the word catalytic project
Sure.
that can kind of hopefully sort of show what can be done, and maybe we can replicate that.
How would you describe downtown Orlando to someone who has not been to downtown Orlando?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I always ask myself, if you were to have a friend
Right.
come visit, what
Right.
would you say? What would you expect? So the first thing I say about downtown Orlando is it's got a lot of great attributes, right? I mean, if your perception of Orlando is Disney World or iDrive, when you come to downtown, both to the core and the surrounding neighborhoods, like College Park and the Milk District and Mills 50 and Ivanhoe Village, I think you'll be impressed at the
Right.
sense of place, the small business community, the food and beverage scene. I think you'll be impressed with the companies that are here and the creative and the tech companies that are here. I think you'd be surprised there's more to it than you might think. On the other hand, I also believe that you would see it and you'd be like, this is better than I expected, but there's also a lot more that could be done here, right? And so I take that as a positive. One of the things I like that Mayor Dyer says about Orlando is it's not done yet. We work in a city that I call the appropriate size pond. It's not such a big pond that you can't do a project and move the needle, but it's not such a small pond that there's nothing going on. I mean, we have net population growth and net job growth and good economic activity and everything. So, but we're somewhere in that thing to where we're growing, and we need to understand how we want to grow. And another person has referred to it kind of like as adolescence as a city. So you know how awkward adolescence can be for a downtown and for a city. And so how do we think about how we want to be when we grow up? And how do we want to be when you go to some of the cities that you really like? And you come back from and you're like, wow, I wish our downtown was like that. Well, they're more mature. They've got more of a history. They've had more time to do it.
That's a great point. I mean, the 1980s downtown, the 1990s downtown, it was Church Street.
That's
and
right,
what?
entertainment
I mean, that was it,
based.
right? I mean, you didn't just go down there. You had a reason to go down there. What has it been like to see that transformation, though, into what we have today?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I will say a sort of a fundamental eureka moment for me was I started thinking about the economy and the future of city building, and there became this catchphrase that was floating around. Everybody was saying eds and meds, so that meant education and healthcare. And it basically was saying that business for business sake and office for office's sake, right, was not really a growing industry. What was really driving growth was education and healthcare. These are these anchors that are growing and are really institutions within their towns, and they stay there a long time. And we have obviously two of those here with the two hospitals that are on the north and south end of downtown, and then bringing UCF and Valencia downtown was important. So to me, it's using those type of things as anchors, not really thinking so much about something that might not stand the test of time. What ultimately happens with a Church Street station, as good as it was when it was good, it doesn't stand the test of time because Disney or Universal or whoever wants to do it. Office tenant, as great as they may be, ultimately may decide to move or lay off people or get bought by people or whatever, right? So I think about, we use the term innovation district, and I think about having our downtown being anchored by some of these institutions that are really long-standing, are really durable, right? If you think about it. And then if you live there, do you like the place? You can kind of work, right? If you're now the way work is, you can kind of work from anywhere. And so, is downtown attractive to you because it's a neat place to be, and you like the energy of it, you like the interaction of it, you like the social connections of it, and I think we got to pay careful attention to that as we go forward. I don't think decisions that are made without that in mind are going to work. I'll just couch that around the term placemaking, but everything we do should be about, are we making it a better place to be, and not so much do we get this tenant or we get this use or do we get this sort of thing that makes us feel like a lot of people are going to come in the short term. I think it's more about long term.
Now, violence has no doubt been on the rise in downtown Orlando over the last few years, prompting the city to look into making safety changes to the bar and nightclub scene. Coming up, Ustler will talk about the challenges there and whether it could impact future development.
This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. Whether you're a fan of downtown Orlando or not, you probably agree improvements need to be made. City officials are on board as well, hoping to transform the heart of Orlando into more of a neighborhood rather than a destination. Craig Ustler, the developer behind the new Creative Village, is back with us to talk about the impact the nightlife scene is having on the area.
So right now what we have is, so you've got a high concentration of bars and nightclubs, which attracts a certain age demographic, right? And then you've got destination. So the way the Dr. Phillips Center works, the way the Amway works, you go for the Springsteen concert, that's a destination thing, right? So what we need to do is we sort of need to broaden, enlarge the tent, so to speak, right? So that you can sort of capture a broader piece, expand your market, so to speak. And then take people so Creative Village is largely a younger demographic with students, right? And then have those students graduate and live downtown and stay downtown sort of longer. I'm not against the bars and nightclubs. In some ways I give them credit for what they've done. It's just you got to fill in sort of missing pieces around them so the offerings are more holistic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when you come to an event, like you said, if you came right now, you sort of in your mind, you would be destination oriented. You would say, I'm going to a Broadway show, or I'm going to whatever, or I'm going to go to Creative Village and eat at the Monroe, and then I'm going to leave, right? So why would you stay? Why would you walk around? Do there become enough other things for you to do, right? And that can be controlled by what we as developers do to an extent, but it also sort of has to be controlled by the amount of people that are living there and as their demand. So you got to do both at one time. I will say the apartment market in downtown Orlando is super strong. And the people that live in those apartments make good money and they want to live there. They like the urban lifestyle. The urban lifestyle is not meant for everyone. It's just undersupplied. And so if you build sort of that form, it fills up, and it would fill up almost as many of them as we could build. So we've got to keep on that trend. In some ways, that's the easier piece, right? The idea that we need more housing. The tougher piece, I call it the amenity piece. The amenity piece is what coffee shop is there, what bar is there, what dog place is there, right? It's that kind of stuff. And so that's what you're talking about, is sort of what rounds out the offerings where you'd want to be there more often for more reasons.
I'm curious how the bad PR that downtown has experienced over the last maybe year or so with the violence going on and the shootings, how that has played any sort of role, or if that's impacted anything whatsoever as far as when you talk about in the development field, whether someone has reservations about doing business down there.
That's an interesting question, right? So the glass half full answer to that question is all the apartments downtown are full, all the new buildings we build fill up. The Performing Arts Center is doing incredibly well. The Amway Center does great. The events at the Citrus Bowl do great. The soccer stadium's a great experience. The many people love living downtown, love working downtown, love socializing downtown. That's the glass half full part. The glass half empty is that that if people, real or perceived, think there's a public safety issue or a cleanliness issue or a homelessness issue, whatever that is, that's your brand, right? I mean, what people perceive you as. In reality, downtown Orlando is as safe as any other major downtown, all that stuff. But that doesn't really matter. I also say in reality, there's plenty of parking. But if you don't think there is, then that's not your reality, right? So I think that's where I was talking about placemaking, in the sense that we've got to be more cognizant of your brand and your perception is your reality. We can't just raise our hand and say, no, it is safe, or no, there are places to park. If people don't think that, then we sort of have to prove otherwise, right? Sure. And the interesting part about trying to prove out some of that stuff is, by and large, investors, as you say, does somebody sort of not want to invest in Orlando because of that? So far, no. Orlando is still really, really attractive. Does a good job of attracting investment, and obviously when we build these huge projects, we're attracting capital from outside sources. The view of Florida overall is good, of Orlando is good. Strong leadership between Mayor Demings and Mayor Dyer. We're perceived as a region of partnerships and collaboration. Having said all that, I always say you're a day away from making a mistake that can ruin all that. And there has to be a sense of urgency about how fragile that is, and this really isn't any neighborhood. This isn't specific to downtown Orlando, but it's probably more acute in downtown Orlando, as you said, given some of the things and some of the stuff that's in the news right now about the nightclubs and bars. So I would say that a hyper focus on clean, safe, and hospitable, those are the words that I use, and how that experience goes, especially, and I always say, especially given the business that Orlando's in. I mean, Orlando's the hospitality capital of the world. So if a tourist was to come downtown for a show or a game or dinner or whatever, they've got to be delivered a world-class experience.
Sure.
We should not aspire for our downtown to be pretty good. Mayor Dyer says he wants it to be the highest quality downtown in the country. Thomas Chapman from the Downtown Development Board has inserted the words day and night, meaning at all times of the day. So that should be the goal. That's a pretty audacious goal, but that really should be the goal.
What will downtown Orlando look like in your eyes? Maybe in a perfect world, or maybe realistic. I don't know. You can decide.
Right.
By 2030, so 7 years, will it be a noticeable change as far as maybe, the landscape of it or the experience in itself? What will be downtown Orlando 2030?
So I think the crystal ball, which is always fun for real estate developers, is good, and I think it will be noticeably different. I would tell you the biggest thing that I think will have happened by 2030 that you can't see yet is some of the things that the neighborhood stakeholders have put forth will have taken hold. So at that point, the downtown campus of UCF and Valencia will be over a decade old. It will have graduated thousands of students. Some of the affordable housing initiatives and other things in Paramore will have really taken hold. Some of the transportation things that hopefully we're on the cusp of with Sunrail and links to the airport and whatnot will have taken hold. The downtown residential population will hopefully have doubled or tripled again. The expansion of Advent Health and Orlando Health will have continued, that they'll stay on sort of the tear that they're on. I think the spirit of partnership and cooperation will have endured. I think that the county and the city will continue to work well together. I would tell you I see a whole new district at the southern gateway of downtown Orlando around Lake Lucerne and around the Performing Arts Center. I see the magic with their mini version of what they're aspiring to be across from the Amway with a new hotel and a kind of a convention meeting space and a lot of entertainment options. I think the food scene, the bar scene will have evolved at that point, matured at that point with a much wider array of offerings. So I'm optimistic, but I don't take it for granted, right? I mean, I'm the one who sort of says, to use a sports analogy, I'm the coach that thinks we're going to win, right? And I believe in the team.
You have to,
right? I have to,
yeah.
But I do believe it but I also believe we could lose. I'm thinking we're going to win, but I'm scared of losing at the same time.
Yeah.
And I believe that sort of balance is how it goes. And I will say the ability to influence the future of downtown Orlando and Orlando as a whole, our region, you know this from growing up here, it gives me great encouragement. You can move to Orlando and make a difference. We are not a closed sort of, it's not New York City where you have to go up there and it's not in the good old boys club, you can't make a difference.
Sure.
So in some ways that's what gives me the most optimism is I've seen, look at what Maxwell Frost has done.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody who can just come and become a leader and I have, from interacting especially with the students at Creative Village and some of the youth in the Paramore neighborhood, I'm really optimistic that we're going to get to a good place.
Certainly a lot to look forward to. My thanks to Craig for his time this week. For more information on the transformation of downtown Orlando, just head to clickorlando.com/weekly. I'm Justin Warmoth. Hope you have a great Sunday.